Neon Genesis Evangelion for the Nintendo 64. Released on June 25th, 1999 by Bandai, was an attempt to bring the hit anime to home consoles.
Spoiler alert, it did not succeed. At the time it received reviews, probably, and they were not good reviews, probably. And the question on our minds today is, how does it hold up? Spoiler alert, it doesn't.
Okay, dude.
What?
Can we try not to spoil how this review is going to be?
The bad game is bad and they should know.
Okay. The story of the Evangelion video game is exactly the same as the Evangelion television show, only it's not told very well. Each mission follows an episode of the anime, but they're random episodes, so you don't really get a cohesive story as much as snippets from the show. You won't really get the full story or any story in this game, so if you're interested in the story, I say watch the show. Specifically, the story in the game seems to be taken from the first 13 episodes and the movie. This may seem like a cop-out, but to say that this game tries to tell a story is a dirty lie, and I won't stand for it.
Just know, this video game makes me angry, and I'm gonna say a lot of bad words, but instead of you hearing my potty mouth, I'm gonna replace it with sounds of Shinji screaming to illustrate my point. You'll see why in a bit. The music in this game is maybe the best thing about it, is it's music taken directly from the show. It's lower quality than what you'd hear in the show, but it's a Nintendo 64 game, so what are you gonna do? The music works really well for the most part, except for the continue theme, which gets grating and feels like ants are burrowing into your skull. I do, however, think that this is more the result of it being a game over track, and you're not really meant to like game over tracks. They're just there to taunt you.
I love the music from the show, so I like the music here, but that doesn't mean it works. Much like how unlikely Yusha pointed out in the Star Wars Shadows of the Empire review, music for a show is timed specifically for a show, but it's much harder to time that for a video game, which is why most video games have looping tracks that don't get in the way of other sounds. Here, it feels like the music is a touch too ornamental, and gets in the way of the video game-ishness of it. It detracts, breaking your concentration. Oh, it's gonna be another triggered thing again.
Okay, Shinji, we'll talk about you now, just calm down. The sound effects in this game are all over the place. There's some really good voice acting in this game, even if sometimes it sounds a bit tin canny. The fact that they tried to implement it at all is impressive, and they did an overall good job most of the time. All the other sounds seem generic, but they don't detract from the gameplay, except for Shinji. He screams at everything. Hey Shinji, want some tea? There's an angel coming. Do you like cheese? What about you, Ava? Me too. Seriously, he screams over anything, and his Ava sounds like George of the Jungle trapped in a beached whale. These two were meant for each other. Trust me when I say that these sounds will be ingrained into your memory for the rest of your life if you play this game. So when it comes to sound, the music is good and the voice acting and sound effects are questionable to...
I am so sorry. Similar to the audio, there's some good stuff in the visuals, but also a lot of not good stuff. For instance, the mech designs. Good. Their blocky, angular style really works for the N64, and even the smoother angel designs work really well and have good jerky movement that reflects the show. This is some of the best mechanical design that I've seen in an N64 game, period. But the backgrounds are poopy.
At first it looks like they might be good, with the buildings having good design and being three-dimensional even though you can't interact with them. But then you realize they're the same buildings in every level, with color swaps. Except for, of course, when all of a sudden the game throws you into the final stage of Earthbound. What the f? The cutscenes at the start and end of the missions range from being decent to MS Paint clip art. I understand that the 64 had some graphical limitations, but why couldn't they just import low-rendered video from the series instead of trying to replicate it with obvious lip flaps and terrible low opacity effects? The animation of the game itself looks good in theory, but in practice it feels too slow and clunky, like a real robot. What is this? I don't play video games for reality. I play video games to forget about my crippling debt, although it does look and feel pretty good when you break an enemy's arm or neck. Snap.
I'm gonna be combining gameplay and controls for this one because I feel like the controls impact the gameplay for this game a lot, which you could say for any video game ever. Who wrote this? You'll see what I mean. So the gameplay is as follows. There are 14 missions altogether, and each one follows a seemingly random episode of the series, and it doesn't really seem like the episodes are chosen to tell a story as much as they are to display an aspect of the game. For instance, the first two levels seem to indicate that the game is a fighter since you fight angels as Shinji. The controls are pretty simple but weirdly mapped. You use the joystick to move backwards and forwards and to duck because what good is a Z-axis in a 3D game anyways? You use down C to activate your AT field, which is just a shield, and you use B to block and A to attack. R apparently also is used to grab or something, only no it's not because when you press it, Unit 1 just kind of hops forward a little. He is a kangaroo. Also, you can use A and B together to grab and perform a power attack. This is the only way to win as the auto attacks are weak and leave you open to get hit by power attacks from the angels. Once you figure that out, you start to think, oh okay, so this game is a fighter and I have to take out all the angels.
Spoiler alert, you're wrong and the game will ridicule you for this ridiculous thought. Instead, Mission 3 is a first-person shooter where you have to use the joystick to aim for the center of a giant crystal angel and hit Z to pull the trigger. This would be difficult enough on its own since the target is small and the controls on the 64 don't lend the best to first-person shooters in the first place. But it's made hemorrhoid-burstingly harder by the fact that the game is constantly fighting your attempts and sending your cursor all over the screen. It takes a few tries and a lot of patience, but once you very carefully get the cursor in the right spot and hit Z, the mission is over. One shot, one kill.
I personally think that this is the easiest mission in the game. Not sure why it gave you so much trouble.
Why don't you make like a celebrity in 2016 and go die?
Whoa.
Sorry, dude.
I'm just upset because that's such a dated joke. When did we write this?
Almost 2 years ago.
Wow.
Mission 4 realizes that you now think the game is going to be a mixture of a fighter and FPS, and it laughs at you while mocking your loved ones. Instead, you first have to chase down an angel before it reaches the city by rapidly tapping A and down C, A and down C, A and down C. This button mapping is the worst in the game and incredibly unneeded when you have the B button just sitting there, doing nothing, waiting for someone to touch it. But okay, you catch the angel and then the two of you have to battle it out. So it's a fighter again, you're thinking. Nope, now it's a button mashing contest with the slide bar. The point here is to keep the bar in the middle by rapidly tapping A and down C again. Only this time you have to hold the joystick in the direction it tells you to. Only the game is a liar and sometimes you have to hold it in the opposite direction, or do a rain dance or sacrifice a virgin. That'll do. Really, I'm not sure what the game wanted here, as this mission is only a couple minutes long but had me fighting against it for over an hour. It is stupidly difficult and not in a fun or fair way. It lets you win when it wants to, and it gave me Crohn's disease. Mission 5 realizes that up until now you've at least been battling opponents, so it decides it doesn't like the level of comfortability that you must have and decides to be a dance-off. Literally, it's just a rhythm game, kind of, where you press a sequence of buttons in the correct order at the correct time, although it doesn't have to be in any kind of rhythm. Why do the EVAs have to step up to the streets? Or would Step Up 3D be more accurate?
I can't tell if this joke doesn't work because you're old or it doesn't work because no one watched those movies.
Either way, it's simple, and if you know what you're doing, there's even a little secret at the end. It's not much, not worth the time, but it's there, and that's what matters, apparently. Honestly, after the last two missions, this one was a nice little break. Not good at all, but less Crohn's inducing.
Mission 6.
Hey, have you ever swam in a hemophiliac's nightmare while a giant alien tried to ram you until your head exploded? Me neither.
Who hurt you? In this mission, you're tasked with swimming through a bunch of red stuff while trying to find an invisible angel before it attacks you. Once the game tells you that you see the angel because you won't be able to tell yourself, you have to lock onto it with Z and then time a button sequence which will do damage to it. You have to do this repeatedly until the thing dies, all the while trying to use the B button to dodge its invisible attacks. It's super fun. Mission 7 is a weird mixture of too easy and too hard. This time you have to press A to make the EVAs jump over power lines at the right time. You don't really have to hit every box perfectly, only the last, but the first few will make the last one bigger, thus making it easier, which is weird because this is already a really easy task. The second part sees you having to once again repeatedly tap A and down C until you stop an angel from crashing down into the earth. This is another one of those moments where the game decides to let you win when it wants to. Perfect game design.
Mission 8 is exactly the same as the first two, except you're more likely to get hit, so you'll want to use your AT field more often instead of just walking up and pressing A and B. Although you'll still want to press A and B if you want to win. Mission 9 is another fighting mission, but it's not like the others. You basically just have to respond to the prompts when they come up on the screen and either press A or B while moving the joystick in the direction it tells you to. The margin for error in this one is really thin, so you'll have to time each input perfectly if you want to win. I eventually figured out that if you put in the direction and then either A or B, you're more likely to get it than the other way around, but I still feel like I beat this mission almost entirely based on luck. Or maybe I'm just the best EVA64 player in the world.
Mission 10 sees you throwing a spear through space to try to hit a big glowy
Rorschach test.
I do not like you right now. It's a lot like the third mission because the controls are finicky and sensitive, except now the target is also hard to hit. That's because you don't really know where you're supposed to hit it, so you can have that lance going straight down the path only to whiff at the last second. Quick tip on this one, look for a very faint, very small circle and aim for that. The second part is another A and down C tapathon. Praise the Lord! Those are my favorite. Mission 11 is probably the most well tied in terms of story. It sees you fighting against a possessed unit 2 and actually tries to tie in the gameplay fairly well, except that the gameplay sucks. You have to try to use A to slash or the A and B combo to do a power attack, but that almost always leads to a clinch scenario where you have to rapid tap A and down C to win the standoff. This takes forever, and like every other tap mission, pit your fingers against the controller in a fight to the death. It's tedious and maddening. I don't care for it at all. Mission 12 puts you in Unit 2 and asks you to smash tanks and helicopters. You move as normal, attack attack as normal and are completely invulnerable. It's timed, but even if you don't finish in time, you win in like 30 seconds. It's an exercise in pointlessness, but you can smash helicopters with other helicopters, so that's fun.
Mission 12.5 is an extension of Mission 12, which doesn't make sense because other missions had 2 parts, but instead they chose to separate this one? It feels like they just needed another mission, but okay. This is probably the funnest mission in the entire game, as you play as Asuka in Pilot Unit 2 while taking out 9 angels back to back. They all die in one A plus B combo, but I like that they can appear both in front of you and behind you and that you actually have to block some attacks. Not really a hard fight, but a fun one. Or maybe the other 12 just drove me insane and I'm taking what I can get. Mission 13 is the final mission and only obtainable by playing through hard mode. This fight is exactly the same as the one in 12.5, only now you play as Shinji and die from 3 hits. Also, we're back to the final level in Earthbound. This fight is a bit different in that you have to wait. A lot. Before each unit attacks, you have to wait for them to get close. Then you have to wait for them to attack by backing up or ducking. Then you have to A-B smash their heads in and wait for the next one. Then you have to wait for Shinji to stop screaming. Then you have to wait for your hearing to come back. Then you have to wait for the inevitable fever dream that you're going to get from playing this game to the end. Spoiler alert, the fever dream will contain penguins. Then you'll have to wait for your therapist's schedule to open up so you can start repressing every memory of everything you've experienced while playing this. Then you have to wait for Satan to stop.
The bonuses in this game are pretty bare bones. Like Shin said, there's Mission 13, which you get for playing the game on hard mode, and a simulation mode that allows you to choose any of the 5 children from the show and fight off angels to your heart's content. You earn different rankings in this mode by killing angels without taking damage and not using much ammo. This is probably more fun than the main game in all reality, and you can gain unlocks for it by completing the main game. There's also sound tests, which basically lets you listen to things from the game, and the action viewer, which lets you get a good look at all the models and unlockables more as you play the game. I really like the sound test. One of the best parts about this game is the music, so being allowed to sit back and just listen to the music is great. There's also technically a versus mode, but you have to use cheat codes to get it, for some reason. While all this stuff is fun and probably better done than the main game, nothing is really outstanding here, and it all feels like either an afterthought or, in the case of the versus mode, something that should have been included from the very beginning.
This is not a hard game to play if you don't know a lot of Japanese. If you know how to read characters and look at menus, then you should be fine. It was a pretty easy game to navigate, and although they used a lot of kanji, there were a lot of visual aids to help you out. If all else fails though, then there are some handy guides online that you can use to figure out each mission. So it's a pretty accessible Japanese game to play. However, Neon Genesis Evangelion for the Nintendo 64 does not feel like a real game. It has aspects of a game, but it is not a game in the way that I think of games. It doesn't have a cohesive playstyle or even plot. It's more of a collection of mini games that range from being too easy to being nearly impossible with an Evangelion skin slapped across it. And the difficulty isn't natural. I actually found the 4th mission to be the most difficult of them all, and that's not how it should be. The controls are clunky and unresponsive, and the gameplay is slower than 2 snails in molasses. And with how much they seem to really love the horrible A and down C mechanic, I'm genuinely surprised that they didn't turn that Shinji scene into a mission of its own, where you gotta mash those buttons and make Shinji mad.
Dude!
What? I was referencing self-pleasure.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say the other thing.
What other thing?
When a game is difficult in a fair way that requires skill or critical thinking to defeat, then it's fun. But this game tells you how to beat each level before the level begins, and then makes the controls, button mapping, and responsiveness so bad that it feels impossible. Most of the difficult missions I feel are won out of luck and not skill. I think the game was designed this way on purpose to artificially pad out the playtime, since if it wasn't this unfair, you could clear the game, hard mode included, in an hour or 2.